will they approach this patch and this draft? That is what we're about to find out. Rogue, of course, massive changes. Misfits saying relatively the same. This is going to be a lot about setting expectations for both of these lineups and a potential shift in power in the LEC as Rogue do look to make a name for themselves. Already the Draven banned away, the Cat banned away, the Bird Lady banned away, Ryze and Aatrox as well.
That would be an excellent duo for the Bird Lady and the Cat in the same lane in terms of nicknames possible, but fortunately not today. So the one that did slip through here is the Sylas, and so now it's the gut check. Can you pick up the Sylas, because can you use it as a flex pick between multiple positions like Prophet and Larson? And we'll see where they decide to go.
Always wondering. Sylas feels like one of those champions where he is just so absolutely powerful if you have a dedicated Sylas player on your lineup, but we've also seen some teams take it and then not really be able to utilize it to full effect. Rogue, however, are not scared and will lock it in.
Spider just like leaned over to Prophet's computer. He's like, no, Sylas. There you go. Lock it in for you, buddy.
Look, you gotta, sometimes you have to put the pressure on. He's like, guys, I'm not sure. They're like, no. That Jace that they're gonna take away, no, that's fine. We'll take that Sylas. You lock that right in.
I'm really happy to see Prophet return to the roster. I think kind of the two core members that Rogue really made a lot of success with in spring was when Prophet was playing and then when they did bring in Vander. So I'm excited to see them kind of reunited on this LEC stage. I think Rogue, when they're successful, it's because Vander is on a playmaking-oriented support. We hear all the time that he supposedly is a very loud voice. Haven't listed the comms yet, so can't confirm that. But I can definitely tell when my eyes are looking at Rogue play. If he's on something like a Galio, they seem to be much more decisive and very fast tempo around the map. So I really want to see them get the firepower. Like something like a Nautilus would have been great for Vander.
I was gonna say, speaking of the playmakers, Nautilus now locked in. I think almost exclusively seen in the support role after those first few games in the play-ins at MSI. That he did see in the mid lane, but would love to see it mixed up a little bit as Rogue now debate their options. But already a very long champion selection that each team is letting this timer tick down as far as they can before they lock in those picks.
See, I'm really curious that Misfits went for high priority on Nautilus. Like you're saying, it can still be a flex pick, so maybe trying to hide their cards a little bit, when I still feel that Rek'Sai is in a really stable position, a very strong position in this meta.
Now the Rumble locked in as well. It was seen top lane earlier today in the Splice game in the hands of Vizichachi, but I do think Rumble mid is an interesting option.
Yeah, we've heard the rumblings of it. I like the fact that they have the Sylas on their team this time around, so like Sylas will not screw us over on the other side by taking Rumble ultimate.
Yeah, Sylas stealing Rumble ult is the most toxic thing in the world because you pretty much play Rumble for the Rumble ultimate. Just get a better Rumble in your hands, but it will be the J4. You got a strong solo laner in the form of the Jace on the side of Misfits, and you have two fantastic form of Engage. Now, of course, it is Engage that Sylas can take away. We did see Faker stealing Nautilus ults earlier in the day and saw how oppressive it can be, but I like Misfits when they do have Engage options.
Yeah, and that does put a lot of responsibility on whoever the Sylas player is going to be for this Rogue lineup, because so far there's not a lot of really hard engage tools for Rogue. Yeah, you can drop down the equalizer and try to run up on to your opponent, but you are really looking at Sylas to grab these big ultimates like the Cataclysm, like the Depth Charge, and look for these initiations, whereas Misfits already have a really well-rounded comp. They have a good early game powerhouse in the Jace, really hard engage, so if that Jace starts getting snowballing, you're able then to immediately pull the trigger and start punishing teams if you find a lead.
I wonder if we do see the Jarvan used potentially as a solo lane pick. Jace in the mid lane, not something we've seen a ton of. I feel like it has to be utilized in the top lane, but whenever we cycle to a new patch, I'm always caught wondering about things that were flex picks in the past, or in the case of Jarvan, things that we've already seen used in those solo lanes. Cassio, Sona, Sivir going to be the ban, so two pretty solid late game threats limited from the side of Rogue. Misfits does not want to see them on the opposite side. What is the final ban going to be here as we enter the second pick phase?
Seems like they are trying to clear up that mid lane. Curious if that does mean that the Rumble goes in there. I'm not super familiar with a lot of Rumble's mid lane matchups.
I think we keep saying it because we're afraid that we're going to get that, like the classic, like, how did you guys not know about this one thing that like 3 people have been playing in solo queue thread on Reddit? But we have to leave the room for doubt, Frostgurren.
I've come to accept that heading into champion selects until things start really settling in the meta, that I just buckle up and I'm just...
We're along for the ride.
You teach me.
And that's an Elise locked in, so... That's a Jarvan solo lane. That's a lot of AD on the composition. Elise will balance that out nicely with some AP damage in the jungle.
It does lend to very strong dive potential between the Jarvan and the Elise. We talk about this a lot, that when you're bringing mixed damage profiles, it makes it really difficult, especially in the early game, to try to do anything about it. Like, you can go home, you can buy your resistance boots, but then either the Jarvan or the Elise are still going to make an absolute terror for you. So the dive potential very strong for Misfits if they want to use that Jarvan Elise together.
Absolutely. And of course, on the opposite side, we have a very heavy AP damage profile for Rogue between the Sylas, the Rumble. Bit of a split on the Kais, a bit of AD though in the hands of Rek'Sai, so it does balance out a tiny bit. And you talked about playmaking, engage, focus supports for Vander, about how much better this team looks when he is on one of those champions. And Rakan feels like it fits the bill.
Yeah, hopefully he has a bit of a stronger performance. I think like Norskaren really struggled to make the champion work earlier on today. I'm not super sold on where I feel Rakan really ranks, especially when Miffy showed how strong Tahm Kench can be into a lane. But it's also curious to me that so many teams have just completely moved away from Galio. He was hit on the recent patches, the 3 patches from MSI into this point, so the fact that Rakan is now eking over such a very strong engaged champion is quite curious to me.
And I'm excited about a lot of things in this draft. I'm excited about Hansama back on Lucian. Once again, a very lane-dominant AD carry paired with something aggressive like the Nautilus, but on the opposite side, Inspired, a guy that we have not really seen on the LEC stage yet. He is so good at this Rek'Sai. We've seen him single-handedly take over games in the Polish League. Yes, was not as good in EU matches the most recent showing, but going to give him the benefit of the doubt as we head in here, say that he is a player that we have to keep our eyes on. Because you look at this draft, I feel like we're set up for some pretty explosive early games.
It kind of feels like teams right now are playing around the 1-item power spike, and as soon as they have that, everything, like you said, starts exploding, and we gear up and run full speed into each other. But otherwise, we've had some very slow 1 through 6s, and I hope that with the Rumble in this game, we get a bit more impact out of that level 6, level 11 with those big equalizers.
Have to see what the execution in the team fights looks like from Rogue. Once again, Vander, kind of that veteran voice that we expect to come through for the team and guide them in the early to mid game to make some of those bigger scale plays. And on Misfits, we just want to see what this version of Misfits is going to look like. How is their style going to be defined? Will it be the bot lane focused Misfits that we saw at the start of last season? Will they look lost on the map? Or will they show us something new? So many questions are going to get answered in this first game. Both teams, a lot of time to prepare coming into this season. New patch, some new faces on the side of Rogue. And I think it's time to find out exactly what form both of these squads are in.
Yeah, can Rogue find the success that they had in the Polish League and bring it to the LEC? And will Misfits finally live up to expectations?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Rogue versus Misfits. Almost sang along during that. Turns out my mic was still hot. Luckily for you, audience, I didn't. Terrible singing voice. Now, Misfits grouped as 5 for the level 1. Seems like they've been seeing some cheese and scrims, and they want to stop it. But since it looks like we might not get a whole ton of level... Actually, I'm going to hold that thought. Frosco, we got a level 1 setup potentially coming through. Rogue on the invade.
Yeah, I think it's in response to Vander. Now, we did see this becoming more popular when the Rakans take the cheeky W, and then they can slip in underneath your vision, wait until the cooldown comes back up, and then catch you off guard. So you are correct. Misfits did 5-man stack, but I think it was in a lot of respect to the fact that not only has Vander pulled off some crazy Rakan stuff, but we've seen it internationally as well as domestically last split.
Of course, yes. Hill was saying, Fnatic known for those surprising, aggressive level 1s. It is kind of part of the identity, I feel like, of the LEC. Now you see Misfits going to opt for the leash here onto Maxor, get this guy started on the bottom side of the map, set up now to play around top side if he wants. That's the mixed damage profile you talked about earlier. On the bot side, on the opposite side for Rogue, not going to get an advantage for themselves as they do also opt to leash for the jungle.
Yeah, and I expect the initial jungle pathings to be pretty soft and pretty quiet for the most part. It feels like the day has been, okay, maybe a bit of a gentleman's agreement in terms of our laning, and then on the initial item power spikes on level 6, that's when things really start speeding up.
See, top lane is an interesting one. Jarvan versus Rumble is a matchup that I have not seen in a good while. I like that Rumble is coming back, always an exciting champion, you know. Level 6 is going to be a big deal, but for those of you who haven't had to play against Rumble in a long time, still a very obnoxious lane bully. Flame Spitter, an incredibly powerful tool, and just a lot of actually just tons of damage built into that kit.
And I was actually curious what keystone Soaz was going to take. So has the grasp. We've seen a couple of different iterations. I think it was Wonder that brought to the LEC by pulling out the Airy and then trying to compete with Poke and like drop your flag multiple times. That was in a range matchup. My only concern here is he needs to be really conscious about how he plays around the windows when the Flame Spitter is on, because obviously he wants to get up close and personal to really make the most out of that keystone. So props to Soaz there. He's definitely a legendary Rumble player himself.
You're talking about the gentleman's agreement. Doesn't look like it's going to be one. The flash forward, the first blood for Inspired. We said keep your eyes on that Rek'Sai. Febiven did not listen, and he will drop.
But you can see why Febiven thought that he was okay to be there, because Maxlor was on that side of the map. So unfortunately, Inspired gets right in underneath him and makes it count.
Prophet now collapsing. You know exactly where Maxlor is. Febiven has TP back to the mid lane, but they will have a man advantage here. Inspired, no flash available. Larson is going to step forward. Prophet on the way in. Febiven now running for his life. Maxlor can only watch as his mid laner is set to fall. Febby running, can form off in a second, but the knockup is there. Another kill. 2 for the Rek'Sai. 3.5 minutes into the game.
And salt in the wound right there to immediately decide, let's punish it again. We know he doesn't have flash. He just TP'd right back into the middle of the lane, and Rogue sprint at Febiven.
Brutal start. You expect the range advantage for Jace to give him a little bit more in the early laning phase. And now it's Maxlor who's going to be picking up CS, so while he himself may have normally had a lead, the 2 kills on the Rek'Sai going to nullify that, and things are only going to get more difficult here for Misfits in this early game.
Yeah, take another look at it. The thing about Rek'Sai is that you have to get used to her gank angles, her ability to get into the lanes by how she can use her tunnel, just catches Febiven off guard. But again, Maxlor was on that Raptor camp, so just a second later he comes around that corner and they have vision of that type of gank. So game of inches.
Absolutely. Now, stun comes in when we watch this one, and this is... It's just sad, because you're watching the Elise stand on the outside and slowly watch his mid laner die.
Yeah, the first gank I can forgive because I can see that TP into immediate punish on having the flash.
Fight fire with fire, Frostgirl, and hold that thought. We're going to dive a tower. That's what it's going to be all about. Maxlor throws the cocoon forward. Not going to connect. Woolite still alive under that tower. Flag and drag goes in. Eyes on Woolite is going to drop down in the end. Spider only going to take him out, but Prophet level 4 still in the bottom side of the map, and Misfits fire back on a clean dodge.
This is a completely different pace from the first 2 games that we saw, and I am very excited for it. So we said we were going to buckle in. I feel like I'm locked into a roller coaster right now.
Look, sometimes you want a game of chess. Sometimes you got to wrestle in the mud. Misfits and Rogue, they're looking to wrestle in the mud. Larson walking back to lane, but I don't think that's how the Women wants to go back. Instantly going to go in. No mana, though, on Febiven. Well, the form swap available shortly. Can get a little bit more damage out on the empowered auto, but the healing is there. He walks away. Oh, if Febiven had mana, he would have gotten the kill, but they just did not have the damage.
And disappointing, trying to punish Larson, walking back to the jungle, trying to find that footing back into this lane phase, and it's now a full reset as Inspired is here again.
Febiven.
He can't approach the wave.
He can't do it. He's thinking about it.
No,
he's going third time is the charm. The third time I approach the wave, he won't be here. But Prophet's there, so that will give it away. So Febiven is going to play with a bit more respect. And we have a brief break in the chaos of these first 5 minutes, Frostgren. How bad is it for Misfits right now? Obviously, there's not a significant goal difference, but Jace being down 2 kills in the mid lane does feel like a bit of a hill to climb over.
I mean, obviously, it always feels better if your Jace has more gold. I don't think it's the end of the world or that the game's over. I think it's interesting that it's Inspired on the Rek'Sai side that gets the 2 kills. I mean, maybe you say it's completely different if some of that gold goes into the pocket of someone like a Rumble or like a Sylas. Although we'll keep our eyes on Inspired's build path for Rek'Sai if he wants to really carry.
Say Infinity, I dare you. Somewhere Ender will come screaming onto the desk. Very upset. Obviously Rek'Sai with Halo Blades very strong in the early game, so we have to see kind of how Inspired uses this lead and see if he can be the sort of player who will snowball his team to greater heights when he is given an advantage in the jungle, or if we're going to look back at this game and go, hey, I really wish the mid laner had gotten those kills. Now the knockup is going to come in from Vander though. Freedom to leap in and leap out with the Battle Dance. Blocks a bit of damage, but Hansama very comfortably in control of this lane. And one thing that, in the midst of the chaos, we kind of glossed over is the absolutely massive CS discrepancy on the bottom side of the map. 24 to 67. Maxlor here on the bottom side will match the jungler, and Hansama going to keep pushing forward. He's going to try to stick around to make sure he gets the plate as well, so going to be a huge gold difference between the respective AD carries.
But I already really like the changes that Misfits have done. It feels like they went back to ground zero, and they're like, okay, when did we find success? Well, it was when we played towards Gorilla and Hansama and really allowed them to be aggressive. So give them a lot of firepower, the Nautilus, the Lucian, and Maxlor is constantly bouncing, yes, in response to the mid lane, having a lot of pressure put on it by Rogue, but then making sure that he's giving power to Hansama and Gorilla that they can be so aggressive to open up invades like this.
And honestly, when you see that first play in the mid lane, you start to worry for Misfits, but then you look at the CS on the bottom side of the map, you look at how well things are going for Hansama, and you start to get that confidence back. Because remember, when we look at this lineup, There's obviously a lot of all-star talent here, but Hansama always felt like he was supposed to be the carry of this Misfits team, and he is in a massive advantage state. The second he buys, he's almost going to be able to complete that entire first item. They're not even going to wait for that item to come through. They're going to try to force something here. Hook goes in onto Vander, saving the battle dance. Can't try to walk away, but he's just going to get bursted down. Hansama grabs the kill. The CC layered perfectly.
Yeah, Vander had his flash right there, but didn't expect to A, get snagged up and to be locked down so successfully. So great work from Misfits bottom lane, and they have full control of any of the tower plates that they want. The CS discrepancy, 37 to 85, is only going to grow.
Have to see what the first back looks like for Hansama, because this is going to be massive. Now Inspired, you can see M. Larson posturing, moving towards the top side, ready to threaten a dive, but so as backing off, giving the respect that it deserves. Maxler will take the solo Cloud Drake. It's going to take a while, but doesn't look like anyone is coming to contest there. And a 1K gold lead for Misfits, building up off the back of that bottom lane and the pressure that they have put down. Not quite the entire Blade of the Rune King, which, you know, may be disappointing for Hansama. But of course, when you compare it to his opponent, you've got 3 daggers worth of gold there on top of a boots, 1,200 gold in items versus, well, a lot on the side of Hansama.
And Misfits can continue to play rather aggressively around their bot lane because Prophet still doesn't have access to his TP. Now, as soon as that cooldown comes back up for the Rumble, then maybe you need to change some of your thinking or your tactics about how many resources you are going to put down into that bot lane. Or there's the conversation where Max was like, okay, we've got the vision control of bottom side river, bot lane's in a great spot. Maybe this is now the time that I start to give some of my time elsewhere in that mid, in that top lane. So it does feel like Misfits are now back in control of this early game and kind of get to pick where they want to be, at least until Rumble has that TP and gets unlocked on the map.
And as he gets closer to the TP, also important to note, has passed level 6, the Equalizer available as well. We have the ultimate coming in from Rek'Sai, so the potential damage here, as well as the potential to reset tower aggro. Soaz is going to have to play careful here. Of course, diving a Jarvan, never something you really want to try to pull off, but diving a Jace, perhaps an easier prospect, as Inspired does posture on the mid lane. There is already the control ward there, so he knows he's safe to push forward. And look at that vision on the top side.
And this is Soaz just recognizing that he's weak side right now, so he needs to respect it, and you can see that he's constantly skirting down into that bush. He's trying to check, are they setting up for the dive for me? Because Misfits have made a very conscious decision. Everything is going bot lane. It's really on Hansama and Gorilla.
Grabbing so many plates in the exchange, and now trying to transition some of that power into the mid lane. Then, of course, stepping forward, you can check out their perspective on Pro View. But now a stolen ult could be a key to get the fight kicked off. Gorilla has to be careful about stepping forward. Early game, of course, Aftershock relatively the same as we saw it on 9-8, same at level 1 at least, but it does get weaker without convenient stats. Now the Equalizer does go in immediately, the Recon engage, but the flash is out from Misfits, a perfect disengage on the backside, but still Rogue are looking for a little bit more. Gorilla steps forward, looks for the re-engage, we pause for a brief moment, contemplate our options, and realize that Inspired might just be going down. The flag and drag forward, so it's holding on to Cataclysm, is going to use it on 2, force out the flash, force the dash out as well from Larson, and Vander will drop on the backside as Misfits take the fight.
And you can see what Rogue were trying to say. They're like, okay, we're just going to go towards where the Rumble is, we're going to play around the Rift Hill, get our bot lane away from Gorilla and Hansama, and see what we can make happen around Sylas getting a hijack ultimate. Unfortunately for them, Misfits disengaged from the fight and then had more ultimates, more cooldowns to work with once all of the hard engage had been burned by Rogue without any sort of success.
And Misfits, of course, positioning themselves in such a way that they were incredibly vulnerable to that Equalizer. But they knew it too, and were so quick to pull the trigger to get out of that situation, because on paper, that was the ideal Equalizer. Choke point into the enemy jungle, that is the dream for Rumble. But when the enemy team can get out of it so quickly, when there isn't really any follow-up, when Vander misses the connect or gets flashed away from, you just don't get anything.
I kind of have the same rule about Rumble that Deficio has about Shen. Now, Deficio's rule on Shen is that anytime he's in a game, the first 2 ultimates are the most important. And if they don't bang, then you're probably going to lose the game as Shen. For Rumble, I feel like the first 2 ultimates are the most important. And if they're not absolute bangers, then it feels real bad from that point forward.
It's like a giant fire rock. You make it sound like he's dropping the base of banger.
That would be such a good skin!
All right, we'll talk about alternative career paths for our mutual genius later. For now, Misfits moving down to the bottom side. And once again, should be a pretty easy setup. Inspired is here as well. We'll see if he can move fast enough to stop this dive from coming through. Inspired on the way forward. Prophet still quite tanky. Equalizer does go down. They're moving away for the knockup. Inspired now looking, trying to find it. Soaz moving away. The flag and drag will be up shortly. They're stepping back, trying to move towards Maxwell. The cocoon connects. Soaz is still alive. Misfits are walking away. No! The Brave Seeker, the fadeaway shot will grab the kill.
Too much, trying to look for the fancy feet work and walks back into it. Meanwhile, top.
Vander's burning down. Of course, they're getting stat checked at this point. Hansama is simply too far ahead. Yes, you have a stopwatch, but you don't do any damage. Hansama grabs 2 in the process, and all too easy for the Misfits 80 carry.
And Gorilla is back in form. That was a beautifully executed dive with the stopwatch right there. I had a lot of issues with Gorilla in Spring Split. I felt like he wasn't living up to the hype. A massive name behind him coming over from the LCK to the LEC looks much cleaner this time around.
Absolutely does. Larson now moving up to the top side. TP is coming in. TP responded to as well. Have to be careful. Prophet getting locked up. Gorilla willing to give his life over here. So it's not stepping forward, but just gonna throw out the Dragon Strike. Doesn't have the flag. Larson is on the backside. Have to be careful on this one. Cataclysm now coming in, stealing the Coling, trying to hide behind the minions. Larson moving forward. Goes Golden, right on top of it, trying to make it out. The shutdown comes through, just point and click on the Kingslayer there as Larson will try to walk away, but meanwhile the Rift Herald has been summoned mid lane. Misfits responding with a play of their own. Lots of towers going down. Only 13 minutes of the game. The plates were still up. Massive influx of gold in the favor of Misfits. A 4K lead, but now Vander wants to turn it back. Inspired stepping forward. Knocked up. Featherman now in trouble. He's going to move into the middle of the team to give his life so Maxlor can escape. Good punish from Rogue, but still massive lead to Misfits.
Now that said, there is 2 massive shutdowns given to the 2 primary carries for Rogue. It was Larson who picked up the shutdown onto Hansama, and it was Woolite who just picked up that shutdown right there. So, okay, a couple of things. Gold traded really well back for Soaz because he made sure that he was there to get all of those plates. So this guy who was playing the weak side for majority of the early game now should be feeling very fat and happy. On the other side, again, the shutdowns into the 2 key players that Rogue needed to beat, and it feels like neither team is really choked out of this game just yet, and probably the next 2 fights will decide it.
We'll check out our pro view play from the perspective of Hansama, how he played this one out. Just good use of the dash there, and honestly, an unfortunate first stopwatch because it just meant that Woolite was going to take the damage, and you can tell Woolite looking for the big play, but 3 stopwatches used, and Gorilla is able to walk out. So overall, Misfits bot lane domination. Not something we've seen since the start of spring, but always nice to take a look at it once again.
It's hard because recency bias, you just want us to take a step away from Misfits, but we need to cast our minds back. They had that like 15-minute game against SK where they just absolutely smashed opponents through that bot lane.
It's not Morgana Draven, but I will definitely take the Nautilus Lucian in terms of aggressive bot lanes. And while Inspired, I feel like, has looked pretty good in this game, while Larson has gotten to look good, the bottom lane for Rogue has been suffering. Woolite put so incredibly far behind. You talked about 1-item power spikes being important for Misfits. Well, he's at 1.5. Woolite is not even at 1 yet, so the difference in power is just enormous.
And I do want to take this moment, because I know we've been talking a lot about Hansama and Gorilla. Shoutouts to Maxlor. I know that Vedius and I were quite aligned that when Misfits really did start to crumble, it felt like Maxlor was kind of that big breaking point, and that he just couldn't do what needed to be done for this team, and unfortunately, the jungler is the guy who always gets blamed. Solo queue pro play, never changes. Maxlor has been on fire this game as the Elise.
Few unfortunate moments in those few early minutes, but otherwise, you're right, has been absolutely on point. Now,
his response has been very strong.
And we talked about how important this game is for setting first impressions, right? First impression of a very new Rogue lineup, and kind of a second impression, say, you know, another first impression. We'll give them the second chance for a first impression. I know you're not supposed to, but we'll give that to Misfits. And so far, they're doing well. Of course, matches and kills, but we've seen incredibly bloody games from Rogue and EU Masters where they have tons and tons of kills, but they actually can't generate a gold lead. And this is a bit of a similar situation as they are down 5K. Larson does have to be careful here. The same level as Hansama. Difficult spot to be in.
And this Rogue lineup, or this iteration of the team, when they were in the Polish League, did find a lot of their success through their team fighting ability. So again, love that Vander's on a champion like Rakan. There's still that wombo combo potential of if you find a brilliant equalizer into an incredible Rakan ultimate, that they can very quickly turn it around. And this team did find success and were able to do that repeatedly. I think they had something like a 11-2
they lost a game
record.
Yeah, they lost a game in the regular season. 1 game on Rise.
The one that Vander wasn't there.
And now they move down to the bottom side. 4 members strong, 4 Misfits. Of course, only 16 minutes into this game. Still incredibly early on to have this big of a gold lead. Slowly building towards 6K, 5.3 at this stage. So there's no need to play around Baron right now for Misfits. They are free to just continue to push in on the bottom side of the map. And you can see from the gold difference that right now Woolite is scraping the bottom of the barrel. Needs 2 items under his belt, let's say, to be realistically a threat. And
that shutdown, he was basically like 6 feet in the ground. And when he got the shutdown bonus, he's like, okay, I'm only 5 feet in the ground
He was drowning. And now his head is above the water. And he's like, oh, I can breathe. Still very much underwater, but the head is, we're fine.
That is just a real feels bad moment in that itemization. Kaisa is scrambling here. And that's the thing. It means that Misfits have a really big window before Rogue find their teeth again with their carries.
Yeah, I'd say big is a soft adjective in this case. It is going to take a long time unless Rogue are willing to sacrifice CS for every other one of their laners to funnel CS into Kaisa, which is, of course, an option. Kaisa can be a massive threat. The Storm Razor is now completed, so closer to those first 2 evolves, but definitely an uphill battle for Rogue if they want to make a comeback.
Thank you, observers, for showcasing that incredible ward line that Misfits have there. So Misfits have done a really good job kind of slowing down the pace of the game. Obviously, you can't immediately turn and play around Baron because it hasn't spawned yet, while the gold lead is really speaking for itself about how out of control this game got. But as we're talking about, there's now this big window where Misfits can take a breath, kind of set their feet. Where exactly do we want to attack on the map? How cleanly do we want to close this out? They no longer have to play that fast, scrappy style. They now get to dictate when the engage tools are going to come in, at least until Woolite feels confident on that Kaisa, which he does finally have an item.
Does finally have an item. Now, Hansam admittedly almost has 2, and you can see total control over the bottom side. I like that Misfits have been able to play this slow, systematic game, breaking down the bot lane tier 2 tower. Not something that we always saw from Misfits. If we look way back, historically a lot of their weaknesses were in the mid game. Of course, tune that up, and recently we haven't even been able to focus on that point because things have just been falling apart so early on. So a good look from Misfits thus far. Double Drakes as well, so nearly flawless objective control. 0 towers taken for Rogue. You can see them grouping, posturing, looking to get something back as they know that the backtimers have come in for Misfits. This is a very brief window for them to get anything done on the map, and right now all it means is a tiny bit of vision.
I just think what's concerning is that they have the level 11 on the Rumble, and so they should feel really good at this point in the game, but unfortunately because they're so far behind and because Misfits are so far ahead of the clock and they're able to get a lot of defensive itemization as well as their offensive itemization. You got like Merc Treads basically on every member, you have the Hex Drinker there for SOAS, that it almost doesn't matter even if they find the perfect engagement. You're also then counting on Misfits massively fumbling the next fight.
Yeah, we're looking for some clever picks, but Misfits really aren't playing a fast enough game to open themselves up to a lot of these opportunities, and I think you're completely right. Rumble ult, we haven't gotten to see, I feel like, the second Rumble ult yet. Saw that first one, was a lackluster, and it just feels like Rogue have not been in a position to capitalize again, and Misfits splitting up the map quite well to never really give them that opportunity. You know, Equalizer is one of those ultimates that's just, in theory, so powerful. On paper, 1.5 AP scaling ratio, synergizes so well with flat penetration, but in reality, really hard to find a good opportunity to use it.
Yeah, and it's hard when your team's not ready to team fight because that's what Rumble wants to do. And Misfits are not only doing a good job kind of splitting up the map, taking the free objectives, but also making sure that they're not wasting any gold. These CS discrepancies across virtually every single lane, Hansama looking at a very close flame horizon on his opponent, just continuing to balloon out of control. And we're effectively waiting for the Baron to spawn. It now has. They got the Mountain Dragon for free. They can now turn and start playing around this objective and use this as the carrot to bait Rogue in.
It does feel like the Baron waiting room at the moment. You highlighted the CS discrepancy. And, you know, I feel like we've hit it so many times, but just absolute dominance. Once again, when it comes to setting first expectations, has not been a good look from Woolite thus far. And now Misfits, 20 minutes, they're going to start with the Baron. Inspired can step forward, but without the rest of his team here, he may just get one shot. Of course, Prophet is on the backside. Are they just going to give this one up uncontested? 1k health. Equalizer goes down. Smite will connect as well. They see an opportunity to get the fight kicked off. Maxwell takes a lot of initial damage. Hansama knocked out of the fight for a brief moment with the stolen ultimate. Gorilla not going to fall. Maxwell's still alive as well. No one in Misfits has died yet, but Prophet's going to find the burn. The Rakan engages there. Rogue finding the turn in an instant, but Soaz wants to fire back. Prophet inspired, the last 2 members standing, trying to get to that tunnel, wanting to save the cooldown to get out, but cannot do it. 2 kills quickly picked up by Misfits.
And ultimately, it's still 3 Barons that Misfits managed to walk away, and not only that, but they have it on their mid laner, their top laner, and their ADC. So if they really want to, they can continue to split up the map, apply the Baron in all 3 lanes, and Misfits have now put their foot on the gas.
And for Rogue, it just felt like that is the moment where you have to go in. That is the most of your opponent's resources you're going to get them to burn without you kicking off a fight, but still, things so heavily favored in the Misfits camp right now. 10k gold lead after they break down this tower, absolutely massive. 3 dragons, the Baron powering them up. The next 2 minutes, it is a game of survival. You are getting punched over and over again. You were just waiting for the bell to ding so you can get a break before the next round.
But this was the decisiveness that we wanted from Misfits in Spring Split. Multiple times they would fumble in exactly that moment around a Baron, and they would throw games that surely they thought that they were going to win. This time around, it really sticks. And I agree with you. Rogue are saying, we have to go in now. But the goal discrepancy is what won out in the end.
And they just could not lock down a target. You can see so many low health bars, but they're able to walk away for a long time. And the rest of the team getting started, but very much Bevivin still alive. The Jace still a massive threat. Yes, one of the members of the team that has been focused out, but when left alone, when left free in that back line, just able to cut through so many health bars.
Also very cool for Maxwell, I believe, to get the cocoon off before going into the invulnerability, the stopwatch, right onto Larson.
Oof. Oh, no surprise setup for Vander. Or I feel like when teams get caught out by death brushes in any other region, it's like fine, but like in the LEC, it's probably not super acceptable because like Fnatic did it, and now pretty much everyone does it when they're behind, and you never want to be the guy that dies to the death bush.
It's just so hard because you don't have the gold to invest into the control wards to make sure that you can safely check your own jungle. And look at that damage!
Ooh. Traumatic experience for the Rek'Sai. Can't even see what's going on. Just gets a sense of the tremors and is just getting shot so many times.
He was probably feeling that Infinity Edge like 2-0 early on in this game, and now he's like, nah.
The Black Cleaver now. Maybe a Knight's Vow. All right, Prophet. Everyone is getting chunked. At this point, realistically, we are waiting for another Miracle engage from Rogue, but this time it has to be even better than the previous one. Otherwise, Misfits are just going to keep moving forward, just keep kind of asserting their dominance over Rogue with this massive gold that they did build up in the early game. And it's interesting to watch the first 3 minutes of this game where you do see those repeated Rek'Sai ganks, and now to see where we are now. And I think a lot of people be kind of scratching their heads like, how did this happen? And it's Hansama. It's this bottom lane, the attention that they were given, and what they've been able to do with it is they just instantly smashed through that tower and are now looking to grab an inhib as well.
It's the fact that Misfits didn't take a step back, but here's a step forward.
Big fat rumble flank coming in for Prophet. Buys a bit of time as well. So much damage goes in. Kai'Sa moving in as well. Misfits have overstayed their welcome. Prophet with a beautiful TP. The follow-up is huge for the side of Rogue. Bevivin can try to step into this fight, but there are still 4 members alive and well. Rogue needed a miracle to hold on in this game, and they found it.
It wasn't the second rumble ult. It was the third one that got laid down from Prophet. Catching, like you said, Misfits off guard, overstayed right there, massive damage and great follow-up from Rogue. And again, this is where this team will excel. I expect this to be their core play style throughout the LEC until we start to see maybe some experience lessons learned for some of these newer members to the professional stage, but they excel in team fighting.
And it looked good. And Prophet finding that flank, the guy that we have looked at historically on the Rogue lineup to kind of be a big playmaker, finding those opportunities, finding that clutch equalizer, and just honestly just an absurd amount of damage done.
The unfortunate thing, though, is it meant that Misfits got to go back to base. They got to spend all of their gold, coming back with brand new shiny items. And it's still a massive climb here for Rogue.
Yeah, it's going to take 2 or 3 more of those before they're able to get back into the game. Or, 20 to 30 minutes of stalling. We'll see what they want to go for, but there's the TP on the backside.
And for all of the control wards that Misfits have placed into that jungle, good on Prophet to find the one area where they hadn't.
That was a Misfits barbecue. My God, Rumble does so much damage. Of course, the rest of the team does follow up, but that team fight felt like the Prophet story. Now, but the good news for him is he got a lot done in that fight. A lot of items are coming through.
Yeah, look at the items that he has now.
Yeah, third items, admittedly, coming through on the opposite side for Misfits, but second items are there for Rogue, and that feels slightly more favored for them overall.
I'm really excited to see the appearance of Rumble. Globally, he's starting to pop up a lot more. We keep talking about him being flexed into a mid lane position, so I hope that we get to see it. I think that he's got a lot of interesting matchups, although unfortunately champions like Nico, Silas also have decent matchups into him, so I was curious how much priority Rumble would get when these champions are still available, because you can really punish him in the lane phase if you get access to them, which is why I love him with a Silas. And I think for Rumble to really work, that's what you need to see, either a Silas banned or paired with that champion so Silas can't abuse him.
Makes a lot of sense, of course. Top lane has been kind of summarized as so much about counter picks these days, especially when it's an aggressive meta so full of fighters and bruisers and pretty much everything but tanks at this stage. Now, of course, we did see the Rumble ult used on the bottom side. We're hoping to find that pick onto Fevivin, which once again, it's not about making a bigger play, but buying themselves some time, maybe freeing up the opportunity to contest some of this Baron vision. Because right now, it does feel like with Baron spawn, Misfits can just start this at any time. Without the equalizer as well,
with the Mountain Drake,
really cannot contest this.
They're gonna try. Vander leading the charge.
Misfits giving them the respect, though. Of course, you have Fevivin on the bottom side, so trying to force Rogue to be the team to make the hard decision.
Yeah, and should be noted that it's Fevivin with the TP and not Soaz. So not all 5 members of Misfits can join this Baron pit if that's what Rogue tried to force.
Soaz in the mid lane, of course, Fevivin on the bottom side. 3-member strong Gorilla looking to be that body wall. Stop anyone from making their way into the pit. A lot of mobility on the enemy team, though. 3K. Gorilla going to throw out the ultimate. TP's now coming in there, trying to immediately get the members deleted left and right. The jungler has now been taken down. They're going to turn their attention off of the Baron. Fevivin onto the backside, going to look to clean up Vander. Easy kick pick off there in the midst of everything. Silas, caught in the midst of this team, is not going to be able to get anything done, and Woolite is simply too far behind. Fevivin is just going to eat him for lunch. Double kill coming through for the Misfits mid laner.
And look at where Rumble is. Didn't get to participate in that fight. You do not see that same damage graph where Rumble is doing 10,000 damage in the fight, and Prophet now picked off.
Too much CC, he can't get anything done. He does throw down the ulti, but gets nothing else. That is the ace for Misfits, and it's going to be the game win as well as they walk these minions into the base, as they take their time on this Nexus. Frostgren, we wanted to know about first impressions. Rogue may have struggled, but Misfits absolutely dominated in their first game.
Going back to what worked for them. Excellent performance from the duo lane, Hansama and Gorilla. Gorilla in particular looked in strong form. Loved the response from Maxlore on the Elise. Yes, Fevivin was caught off guard initially by Inspired, but Maxlore managed to fight fire with fire, immediately started throwing down ganks. It got very scrappy, and then once Misfits regained control, had the reins, they were able to slow down the game and dictate it to the very end.
Absolutely, and you can see the moments where Rogue was more on even footing, where Misfits gave them the respect they deserved, where they backed off, they stepped away from that Rumble ulti. They were not looking to get caught in that Flame Spitter. They were not looking to take all that damage from a very strong Prophet. Of course, Prophet does get that one fantastic TP, a glimmer of hope for Rogue, but Misfits simply too far ahead, and feels like they got the sense knocked into them. They slowed down the game once again. They say, okay, we don't need to overstep. We'll respect the Rumble, and they just won it through in the end.
And it was 2 really good Baron setups from Misfits in that game, making sure that they understood when to turn off the Baron, that Gorilla was there to appropriately zone, their vision control was really strong, and again, it was kind of the Baron setup that we had some question marks about Misfits in spring, so I like the evolution not only in the individual performance, but in the team performance.
Absolutely. I think once the first impressions for Misfits thus far are good. Of course, if you are Misfits fans, you probably had questions. You were wondering, same 5 players after what was an 8th place finish, but things coming together nicely in the first game. And on the side of Rogue, once again, young team overall in the LEC, used to the Ultra Liga. Different level of competition here. Have to see how they perform in their games to come.
I want to talk about kind of the importance of this moment right now. Imagine if Misfits lose this game. So imagine after coming off of an incredibly draining spring split, if you come into summer, you look across a team like Rogue, and you lose, I don't know if Misfits would be able to get over that hurdle. That would be difficult for any team. So I think a victory here means so much because it rewards the fact that the reset did come in, that they shook up the coaching staff, that they, you know, either had a cry, had the kumbayas, whatever it was, ate their Wheaties in the morning and got it back on track. I think this can create so much momentum for this team.
That's the Frostgren formula for success, folks. Have a cry, have your Wheaties.
Cry while eating the Wheaties.
Win the first game of the season. Cry while eating the Wheaties. Of course, let's check out, once again, that Baron fight. 21 minutes. Feels like hugely defining moment in the game.
So this is the one where he tries to snipe out the Baron, and he's like, okay, if I get this Baron with the ultimate, it's fine. If not, we are forcing the fight. We need to do something now or lose the game. And Misfits initially pull away, but then immediately the turn on the Cocoon.
Oof. And Hansama, within inches of death, just barely manages to get out there.
Tighten it back.
Incredible. So much healing coming through as he found those kills, and good look overall. Of course, you can see the damage graph. A lot coming in from Hansama, a lot coming in from Fevivin as well, so good on both the 80 threats, and yeah, that goal graph tells us a story. That was kind of the, I feel like the Rogue fan roller coaster. It was like,
Rogue had that
a cliff
flip
right
right
there
there where you're like really excited. Just cut the
coming
tape.
back, Not coming back, folks. It was very difficult. Of course, reminder, schedule has been shifted up, so we will see Excel Schalke at the end of the day. But we do have Maxlor, Hansama, and Gorilla looking to become your key player of the game. You can give us your favorite at LEC Sports on Twitter. Now, the age-old rule was Hansama wins every time because he's adorable. But I do feel like Maxlor deserves a little bit of credit. Was everywhere on the Elise except for mid lane at level 3.
I think all of them had their moment in the spotlight. I personally feel like it should go to Hansama.
All right. I mean, hard to argue with that.
Because he's adorable.
No, that's the worst reasoning. Well, coming up next, we're going to hear from Reckless as he and Fnatic look to get their revenge on SK Gaming. Do not go anywhere. We will be right back.